You know, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, to a wonderful, wonderful lady who decided that being a traveling missionary within the city of Memphis, Tennessee was okay. And so we spent all of our time as a child. I was in church all the time. And my mother and my aunt routinely made sure that they were out caring for the sick. So I spent a lot of my time on the weekends cooking for people that I did not know, cooking, cleaning, hanging out clothes, scrubbing floors, literally whatever I was told to do. But I was raised up to believe that we work for people, we care for people, we work in the church. Everything we did literally was around the church. We were either caring for church folks or caring for church stuff going on, church activities. And so that's how I was raised. My mother believed that you always did whatever you could for the church. And she told me, don't be vexing the pastor. You always do what you're supposed to do for the pastor because the pastor has a hard job. I still to this day remember that. My mother also was a stewardess. And so I spent many Saturdays before first Sunday setting up basically the sacraments. And at that time, it was a wonderful ritual that you went through on Saturdays because my mother and the other ladies walked into the church, they're singing and they're praising and they're praying all over the church. They call themselves sanctifying the church before they set the communion up. And so I was just a little helper. So I wasn't even allowed to be around the altar. I had to hand them things from the corner. So I was handing glasses to them and I was handing juice to them and all that. But it taught me to have a reverence for the church and a reverence for the work that God does and all of the people who put their love and their hearts into ministry. And so that's really where I am. I have a heart for my ministry because I was raised that way, and that's just who I am. And so I would say that more than anything else, that's who Cynthia is. The Cynthia is that little girl sitting in Coleman Chapel, CME Church in Memphis, Tennessee, learning by example, from godly women how to be a woman of God. So that's who she is. I always had a desire and a love for numbers. Even in high school, I was a math major, and people were like, you're not going to major in math, for real, for real? I'm like, I kind of like it. I really do. And I went on, to work in accounting and in business and all the above, and I really liked it. And so as my career came about, God told me, you know what? This is your gift. But also, I want you to kind of let your light shine because I was Cynthia, God's child before I was Cynthia the CFO or Cynthia the Vice President of Finance. And so I was able to take all of what he taught me in school and my work knowledge to actually build what I could say a small environment, especially for my employees as well, where we talked about God. They recognized what I was led by and what my values were. It helped us in the corporate world as well because we had an environment where we recognized that it wasn't just about the money. It was really about people and caring for people and being responsible and working hard because you have a love for God and you are a Christian. Therefore, we work hard, we meet our deadlines, we keep our word. And so, yes, I took that into my career and at my work at First AME Church of Manassas as well because that's what God gave me. I was in the process of selling my publishing company. I had a magazine publishing company in Washington, D.C. And we were in the process of selling it. And we tried to sell it for like 5 years. And I said, Jesus, let me out of this company. But he took his time, basically. But as the year went on and we found a buyer, yeah, of course, my mind was set on going back into the corporate world. I was making a whole lot of money. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll just move from this and time to move on to something else. And God said, no, you're not. And I said, really? What do you mean? What you trying to say? Huh? Say that again. I didn't hear you. He said it again. He said, no, you're not. I've taught you over these years. I've been training you for what's next. You spent all these years working in church financial management. You've helped other churches get started. You know how to start businesses. You know how to do banking relationships. You've studied stewardship, and you've been real diligent about trying to perfect certain things at your own home church. I have been training you to start your own business, helping my houses of worship get more IRS compliant and become more financially sound. I said, that sounds good, God. Not my plan. He said, that's my plan. And if you'll sit and take a moment, you'll realize that I've been putting this in place for all of your corporate life and all of your adult life. And I had to start giving it seriousness because it was real. And I was like, I do know how to start a business. I can do this. He says, and I got you. I said, well, God, I don't even have the first client. I don't even know what to do. And you're talking about taking my entire livelihood and launch out into something that I haven't done before. He says, you're going to be just fine. Trust me. It's going to be fine. I said, for the first time in my life, I'm going to admit I was actually obedient. I said, okay, God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to trust you. And by the time I could almost make up my mind, I went over a friend of mine's house, visiting his wife, actually. And he said to me, Cynthia, you're CPA, right? I said, yeah, Paul, I am. He said, my church needs somebody to do an audit for them. You think you can do that? I was like, oh, sure I can. He says, well, we had a meeting on Tuesday night. If you can come and just tell everybody about, what you do, that'd be great. I think we probably can hire you. Now, here's the truth. I didn't have a business card. I didn't have a flyer. I had nothing. This was on a Friday. He said Tuesday. I did all of that stuff that weekend. I even put up a website that weekend, basically. On Tuesday, I showed up with my little flyers and my little business cards. And from there on, God just took over. That was my first audit client. And the second they told me that night, oh yeah, we'd love to use your services, I said to God, okay, you told me you were going to be faithful, and look at you. Okay, you win. I give up. Whatever you want, I'm going to do this. And from that point on, the business has literally grown based on, I don't know, just his love for me and what he told me to do. And I thank God that he put it in my spirit that I could just be so in love with this work that he gives me such gratification from it. Every time I go into a new church ministry, I am excited about the opportunity to just do something new and the opportunity to help them be something different than they are. And I've walked into all types of situations where things were not all that good. Volunteers were unhappy and ready to quit and all that. And I was able to leave it better than I found it. And I just thank God for it. So Willing Steward Ministries came from God. It continues to be fueled by God, but I am so grateful that I was obedient this one time in my life because he has proven himself faithful over and over again. First of all, I want to say, be obedient. And I know I have heard a lot of people say to me, how do you really know? And you know it's God. First of all, because when it was said, it dropped into my spirit. I was like, I didn't want to hear it, but I knew it was from him. And so the question has to be always, are you willing to risk trusting God? So we know there's not really a risk. But we think sometimes it is because sometimes we're going off in tangents and places we've never been before. But I urge anyone, if God has called you to do something, and he spoke it very clearly in your spirit, and you can't get away from it, because the second he said it, I couldn't get away from it. I may wonder, I could not get away from it. He spoke it, go for it, and watch him prove step by step that he's with you. Because what he will do is I felt at the beginning of Willing Steward Ministries, I felt like I was kind of out by myself. And that's how building a business is. You kind of have to do a lot of things on your own, and you're not getting any clients. Nothing's happening, but you're still developing the website. You're still doing your brochures. You're still doing your marketing, and nothing's happening. And so you have to continue to say, God, I believe what you told me. Therefore, I'm going to keep on walking down the road. I don't have to know what the next step is, but I know that you're going to be there. So I'm just going to keep on going. and he's going to prove himself faithful. He really always comes through. I'm just grateful that I actually paid attention, because I'm not known for doing things like that sometimes. That's just me. Help me, Lord. I did this time. Thank you, Jesus. At Willing Steward Ministries, we offer the basic accounting firm type of services, audits, reviews, and compilations. And also we do some bookkeeping work as well, which is also kind of a big part of our business. But ideally, I consider Willing Steward Ministries to not be a CPA firm. That is not who I am. This is a financial ministry. What we really are we are people who love God. And we are partnering with churches to help them become more financially compliant. And we will do anything in the financial arena that can help a church to become better. We help them find accounting systems and implement accounting systems. I spend a lot of time in my corporate life doing banking and banking relationships. God is another thing. God says, I taught you that so you could use it for churches. And so I spend a lot of time helping churches get financing and to have good relationships with their banks and to know how to keep their books and financials in order for their banks. I do a lot of financial consulting when it comes down to just how to run a church ministry, how to set up policies and procedures, along with helping the finance team and the financial person who's in charge, financial secretary, whoever. I train them. I help them to really understand what it means to be a financial person in charge in a church ministry. Because in order to do our job and to do it well, you have to understand that although it may be accounting, it may be bookkeeping, God's in control. So what I try to teach my financial volunteers at churches, especially those who have that senior level responsibility, is that you've got to understand that 1 + 1 doesn't have to equal 2 in God's kingdom. 1 + 1 can equal 5 if he chooses. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are the voice at the table. Sometimes it says, maybe we should think about that another way. Maybe we should look at it another way. But you're not there to run the show. God's in control. You're there to facilitate the work of the ministry. Make sure that all the things that the ministry needs are taken care of, but you do it in a quiet manner. You do it in the back office. It is not in the pulpit. We basically come in, we count the money, we take care of the bills, we take care of the responsibilities, but we do it in a quiet manner. Because the only loud thing in a church should be somebody shouting, Lord, what must I do to be saved? That's the only thing that matters. And so I try to teach that and teach also financial people that we're supposed to be the financial ministers in our churches. And so the pastor has to preach about stewardship. They have to preach about salvation. They've got to preach about all the things that people need to know for their lives. We, on the other hand, we should be constantly teaching churches and teaching our members how to really understand what it means to be a good steward. We also offer pastor compensation packages. Our goal is to always ensure that the pastor's package and their compensation is the most tax-friendly means of providing income to the pastor that we can possibly provide. A lot of churches really don't understand how they can burden the pastor by incorrectly reporting their income, not encouraging them to maximize their housing allowance, not understanding their tax situation, reimbursable expenses and things like that, things that we can do to make sure that we can put as much in the pastor's hand as possible based on what the church can afford. But how we structure that can be the difference between 20% taxation and 0% taxation for the pastor. So we really want to make sure that we are being loving and kind and thoughtful when it comes down to caring for our pastors' compensation, and also encouraging our pastors to think about retirement. What's at the end of the road as well. So we spend a lot of time counseling pastors, spending time with them and their spouses to really plan out their compensation, and then what happens after I stop preaching. How do I live? How do I take care of my family? How do I do all those things? So that's at my heart, because when the pastors are financially burdened, the church struggles. And so how can we do financial ministry if we don't take care of the shepherd? We can't do it. And so that's one of our focuses as well. 10 years from now, I pray that throughout really the United States, that God's people know that Willing Steward Ministries has tried to open the door up for us to really truly understand in the church how to manage our finances from a biblical standpoint. It's not about fundraising. It's about understanding God's plan for giving, especially in New Testament living under his grace when he's given his son to die for us. And then also that churches are just better off generally with managing what they do, how we record our finances, using the tools that are out there for us, accounting systems that are in the cloud, giving on our cell phones and on the electronic stuff and, you know, all of the online giving and all of that, that we are working in financial communities and softwares that actually allow us to establish church communities. There's softwares out there that allow us to communicate among ourselves within the financial software. People are like, are you kidding me? For real. For real. And that's stepping into the age where we can really take the technological advances that have occurred and make them work for the church. We have kind of stayed back in the dark ages. We've got a lot of churches working with spreadsheets and things like that. But we're not, what we're doing is we're spending a lot of time, you know, with our volunteers wasting their time because we haven't come into the 21st century. I'd love to say that 10 years from now, people say, you know, Willing Steward Ministries came along and now all of a sudden our church is doing so much better and we're less focused on the financial side of things, but we're far more focused on the spiritual work that God called us to do. All because of Willing Steward Ministries. Oh my God, 10 years. I said 10 years? That's not that long. I got a lot of work to do. Guess I better get to work. Willing Steward Ministries, that name was given to me by God. He said to me very clearly that he wanted me to talk about willingly and cheerfully serving, and that stewardship was the basis of my ministry. And so basically the idea was to be willingly a good steward for God in his ministry. That is where Willing Steward Ministries came. He gave it to me immediately. I was like, thank you, God. I didn't know what to call it. So thank you so much for willingly serving God and being his steward. I am on assignment from him. He gave me this assignment and I am representing him. I don't matter. Cynthia doesn't matter at all. I'm simply trying to do what he told me to do in his house. So I'm being a good steward. I'm trying to be a good steward. And I'm surely am willing and happy to do the work. And so Willing Steward Ministries, praise God, it came from him. Thank you for asking that question.
And what's your tagline?
We are helping God's people manage God's finances in God's house. That's what we're doing, willingly and cheerfully.